Today is June 4th, 2022. You were with the Realize the Market team, and we will be going over industry questions that may help small businesses, medium businesses, and even large businesses. So we're going to go around the room. We're going to discuss a couple questions that the team has put together that we think the audience would enjoy and benefit from. So everybody here must and should know the team. We got Zach with us, we got Emily with us, and we got Tiffany with us. So first off, we're going to start off with Zach. Zach brought a couple questions. Emily brought a couple questions, and then Tiffany brought a couple questions as well. They'll be asking the questions, and I'll be answering them in the best of my ability. So Zach, you can kick us off.
For sure. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking in terms of like helping somebody who's maybe just starting a business, because when you just start out, if you don't know too much about business, there's so many things that you have to take care of, that there's just so many questions in the air of uncertainty of where to start, where to put money, when to scale, this, that, and the other. So my questions kind of start there. But
okay.
So let's just say, I just started an e-commerce business, right? And I've managed to set aside $3,000 a month for marketing. What would you do to make the most out of that budget?
So with $3,000 a month in budget, there's very little room to play there. And whenever you're first starting out a business, you have to understand that you're not going to win off of the first things that you do. You have to test and test. And in this situation, especially if you're a new business, you want to make sure that you have at least a 3 to a 5 month burn rate. So what that means is, in a situation, let's say if you're spending $3,000, you want to make sure that you have $15,000 at minimum in some situations to get going. And there's a reason for that, because if you just start off with $3,000 a month and that's all you have, then you only have 30 days to make it right. And to make something right in 30 days is extremely hard, especially in a competitive market such as e-commerce. So whenever you take a $3,000 budget, that would be the first thing, is making sure that you have additional capital coming in, whether it's loans, from family, friends, from banks, whatever it may be. Make sure you have that extra capital coming in so you can keep the growth going, because the first 30 days I would recommend is testing. So
for sure, and I definitely agree with that too, and that's something that I think a lot of people might not be ready for, is the amount of testing that you do have to do to find your lane, especially in the digital world, because that's I would think that would be the goal, is to find where you fit in the digital realm when it comes to advertising your business for the first time. That could take a lot of money. So, all right, let's say that I found that lane. I was able to acquire the funding from my family, people who believed in me. I get to the point where that $3,000 is working really well and I'm ready to scale. So what area of the business would you recommend scaling first? Would it be the marketing side? Would it be customer service? Would it be the in-house team? Like what do I do with this money that's coming in now?
Right. And honestly, I think, that's a great question. And to kind of pull back to your first question, I think we should kind of lay out those foundations on, maybe what should be taken on first before initially spending budgets. And so before you even spend any money, you want to make sure you have 3 things in place. You want your customer experience in place, you want your retargeting in place, and you want your retention in place. Now, obviously, customer experience is how the customer is going to go through your website. You want to send at least 20 to 50 friends and family to your website and say, hey, I found this new website. Will you check this out and let me know what you think? Don't let them know it's your website. Don't let them know what you're doing, and get actual true data to talk about a customer experience.
Just because you think it's awesome doesn't mean they will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just because you think it's cool doesn't mean that it's going to sell.
Right.
You want to make sure that it sells. And so in that situation, you want to pave that foundation of customer experience. The second thing is retargeting. So the best thing that you can do with retargeting is using media buying platforms. That obviously works, like Instagram and Facebook. Those work really well. But the best platforms that we have found for retargeting is email and SMS. The only issue with these platforms is they don't generate new customers. So you have to generate traffic to build your lists. But you want to make sure that these foundations are in place first before you move forward, because if you don't have your retargeting in place through email and SMS, whenever you start collecting those, you're kind of behind schedule. So it's better to be ahead of schedule than behind schedule. So as you before you start spending budget, make sure that you're setting these up into place, so whenever you start collecting SMS and email, you can get the most out of your lemon. You can squeeze the most juice out of the lemon.
I definitely like that, because that kind of leads into the next question of like there's a bunch of different types of marketing that you could do to initially get your business off the ground, and I agree with that statement that it's vitally important to make sure that foundation is set up as far as email and SMS and things like that. But with so much influence now going on in the world, especially like Instagram and things like this, brands are putting people in place to like make the brand seem much larger than life through influencers. And so I guess that kind of leads me to that next question of like, what's your take on influencer marketing, and is that something that I should, is it a safe investment for me to pay somebody who says that they're going to promote my business to a massive following base on Instagram?
Yes, and this kind of goes back. So the second question that you had of kind of how to spend that budget and then influencer marketing, I think it kind of comes into that same wheelhouse of answer there. And I think whenever you start to develop a budget and spending habits within your business, you need to think in a way of testing. So meaning if I'm going to try influencer marketing, and I want that to be, a revenue, and I also want to try Instagram and Facebook, you want to start off with one and don't spread yourself too thin. So if you think that you have found a good influencer or a handful of influencers that can take your business to the next level, and you've seen their impact on other businesses that are related to yours, then it's a good move. Now, if you say, okay, well, this influencer gets a lot of likes, gets a lot of, their post, just gets a lot of likes. That's one thing that people will kind of, it's almost a smoking mirror in some situations, so you have to be careful with it. So within influencer marketing, here's a couple tips that we can give. If you're looking at influencers, look at consistency and engagement. So their likes, are their likes consistent with every single post? Meaning, does one post get 300 likes and then does another post get 30 likes? Does it get 80 likes and 500 likes? If you're seeing inconsistency in their posts, there is some type of malpractice there that's not going properly. So, and then another thing too that you want to look at is their actual comments. Like, are people commenting? Are they engaging? Are people actually, other promotions that they're putting out, are they also taking those engagements? Are they saying, thank you for showing me this business, right? Stuff like that. Are their comment sections actually engaging back into the product? So those are the two things you really want to look at. And if you can't find that specific person or influencer yet, then the best bet is to go into Facebook and Instagram.
Organically, for sure.
But it's that follow-up of like knowing if that reach that they gave you is actually turning into a sale for your website. I've noticed a lot of people are like, hey, I have all these followers and I have like this and this and this that are kind of like my affiliates. And it's like, yeah, but how is that really, how can you see in data realm, that that's really coming into like a sale, and not just hype. Does that make sense?
For sure.
So and that leads to a good question on tracking. So you want to make sure that you track.
Yep.
So your
Somehow.
influencers and starting out, most programs, right? Starting out, most programs are a little expensive. So the best way to track is just giving them a specific discount code.
When we went to Miami, a lot of people were like, Insta this, Insta that, and we even met a few businesses that were like, oh, I've got, these influencers on Instagram. That's how I get a lot of my sales. And we're just kind of like, well, how do you really know that those influencers are turning into sales?
That's an excellent point, and that kind of leads me to my next question here is like, okay, so starting a new business, there's so many things that you have to monitor and keep track of to make sure that you're getting the most out of the finite budget that you have for your business. In terms of that, how do you track your success? What keeps you going? Like, what do you look for in these small wins along the way that push you to keep fighting for those next wins through losses and testing and things like that?
So, there's a distinguished quality between success and failure. And the difference is don't quit, don't give up. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Most people will test. They'll spend $3,000, they'll spend $6,000, they'll test, and it doesn't work. And that's where people sometimes quit. They'll hit that wall. But the best thing about testing and things not working is now you know what not to do.
For sure.
And knowing, if you collect more of what not to do, you'll get closer of what to do. And I think in that situation, it's just don't quit, stay persistent, stay consistent, and don't try the same thing over and over. Keep testing new things. If it didn't work the first time, try something
and document
new.
it somehow.
And
Document it. So
Yep.
then you can share with your team members or new clients and say, hey, we saw that this didn't work. When we first really started getting into marketing, I noticed a lot of clients were like, I'm not paying you to test.
For
And
sure.
we were kind of like on edge of like, well, we're always going to be testing, you know? And now that we're established, we're always testing. We're always testing. We're always seeing what works best.
I
you
love
know?
that you brought that up, because that kind of segues into this next question perfectly of like, it does take a certain type of individual to work with, you know, in terms of like working with us as a team. It's important for the business owner that we work with to understand that we are testing and trying things to make sure we find what area we fit into the best. So with that being said, what's your favorite type of client to work with, and why?
So honestly, that's a really good question. And I would have to say the ones who care the most about their customer and the one who cares the most about their employees. So for instance, if we're working with somebody that has constant communication with their employees, and we also get brought into those conversations as well, with their employees, and they're helping their employee as much as they possibly can, meaning they're asking, what can I do for you? How can I help? Instead of just barking a bunch of commands. That to me shows that they're open for change. They're being able to adapt and not just stuck in their ways. So that would be my ideal client, is somebody who likes to offer a helping hand and doesn't think it's my way or the highway.
Right.
I think it is kind of scary though as a business owner to, you know, open up and be like, okay, I need help in this. You know, it's kind of hard to admit, you know, and it's a little scary
too.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
really scary. So I feel like those types of business owners, they're easier to become like in a relationship with you personally, you know, and so I feel like it's easier to build that trust, and then we can, you know, climb mountains together, you know.
And this is the last thing I have just to add on to that is like, I completely agree. I think that personally, I love working with people who are really focused on the value that they have to offer and not necessarily the dollar figure that's attached. And obviously the money matters, you know, you have to work within your budget, and you have to make sure that people can comfortably extend themselves to do what they need to do. But as long as like making the money coming in isn't necessarily the main priority, especially when you're trying to grow the business, it's how can we grow our value, and what can this team do that we're working with to add to that value. The money typically follows those situations. So that's really all I had, and I appreciate that.
Awesome. So one last thing that I did want to touch up on that we mentioned was retention. So whenever we first started, you know, whenever you're first starting to run ads, you know, you have your email and your SMS in place to make sure that they're doing automations, you're doing drip sequences and stuff. You want to make sure that you're sprinkling in retention, because just because you don't have the customer now doesn't mean that you can't set up the route for that customer to get retargeted and brought back to your company a second or third time. So thinking about that on how can I get my customer from 1 purchase to 5 purchases, you know, thinking in that form, it helps bring a better offer to the table. Instead of it just being, you know, we need this customer to buy one time. How can we make the experience better?
For sure. And I would say the reason for that too is like, you know, based on data backed over, you know, years and years of business, you know, significantly it's 80% cheaper to convert a customer that's already bought with you multiple times than it is to go get a new one. So if you can focus on getting your first 5 customers and then switch your focus to how you can best serve those 5 people to the point that they want to just keep coming back and back and back, then you can start, you know, broadening your awareness to finding more people to put into those processes that you developed.
Right. And, you know, really define in what we call the all-star customer. What's your all-star customer? Where do you want them to get to? Where do you, let's say if you get a customer, I want a customer to purchase, you know, 5 or 6 times, you know, and then they'll keep coming back habitually. So that's, you know, that's one thing, is defining that all-star customer. And then the last thing that I want to leave on the e-commerce and entrepreneur world is get mentors. Invest in yourself before you invest in before you invest in ads, before you invest in anything else. Invest in mentors, and I'm gonna leave a couple mentors to look at. 1, Ty Lopez. 2, Adrian Morrison, and 3, Chris Records. Those three gentlemen getting their courses and just doing a simple Google search on those 3 people will literally change the way that your business will impact the internet and digital marketing.
As long as you take consistent action.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Where my questions kind of stem from, I'm not skipping Emily at all, but I just feel like this is kind of where the flow interjects. All of Zach's questions were really based around new businesses. Mine are really kind of evolved around already existing and established businesses that maybe aren't doing so well. So what advice would you give a business that is already established, has even seen success in their past, but they are still kind of like just floating around? They're not really like excelling at this point right now.
Right. Well, the best thing there that I would probably say without even having to look at a business whenever it comes to bottleneck is there's a kink in the chain. Meaning either 1, somebody's wearing too many hats, or 2, they're not delegating enough because they have too much control in their business, and you have to be able to let go, and you have to be able to hire the right people. You have to be a people person and find where you're lacking in, because if you're bad at something, let's say I'm a CEO of a business and I have 2 other employees, but for the most part I'm doing all of my marketing, I'm creating the slides, everything that's running in my marketing, but let's say that my images aren't as great as like my advertising skills, like my audience selections and stuff. Well, if I'm bad at creating, content, well, if I hire somebody who's good at that, I'm not so bad at it anymore.
Right.
And that's where a lot of businesses fail whenever it comes to scaling, is because they get comfortable in their ways and they don't want to reach out to other people because of trust factors, or maybe they don't want to lose sight or control of what's going on.
Okay.
So that's a really good way to think about it, is how can I reduce some of my work through communication and delegation?
I love that. Yep. What do you think the biggest challenge is when coming in and creating a new process for an old company?
Well, you have to go back at what's, it goes back to, the saying of, we can learn off of what we did wrong. And in that situation here, we can go back to a business and learn off of what they did wrong.
Yeah.
And all of that testing that we just talked about, now you have years of testing right there in front of you.
Yeah.
So
True.
whenever you get a business, and let's say a business is going downhill, maybe it was a bankrupt business and got bought out, whatever it may be, you can go back to those practices and say, okay, here's what worked for them and here's what didn't work for them. So now we know what to stay away from, and now we know what we can dive in and focus on. And then what worked, it obviously didn't work in the best of its abilities, so how can we tweak this a little bit and make it better from the first time? Because obviously this business is going downhill. So how can we take these good points,
Right.
And then turn them into larger scales, maybe making something that was let's say a monthly giveaway or something like that,
Right.
or a monthly discount code that was blasted, and that was holding 30% of the sales of a business. But outside of that week or that giveaway or whatever's going on, sales have diminished. Well, maybe start trying to do maybe 2 or 3 giveaways, or a multi-sell, or merging the two. Do a giveaway with a
testing
sale.
and documenting and sharing with the team.
Right.
So what would you say within our business? What would you say the most important part of our process is?
Communication and delegation.
Absolutely.
I 100% communication and delegation.
I would agree too.
I feel like we've all excelled since, you talked about earlier how, if a business really cares about their team members and their customer experience, that it can become really successful no matter what it is. And I do feel like we have really excelled when we started having like one-on-one meetings with each other.
Absolutely.
3 times a week, and then meeting together, once a week as a big team and stuff and so on. So I think that is also, I agree with that totally.
Even to the point of like, what you said about like hiring other people to put them in the place of, kind of the work that you were doing. Like, it's really important just communicating with the team about the work that you do, in the sense of the possibility of discovering that like the person you're having that discussion with quite possibly possess the skills to take that over for you, to relieve your time and help with that delegation process. But if that communication isn't happening, then you're not even tapping into the skills that you have around you immediately.
Absolutely.
I think it's also really important to understand like each individual's like better qualities so that those tasks do fit with your team members, and then they really excel at them because they're excited to do them, and it fits in their wheelhouse, you know.
Absolutely. And honestly, a nice fun fact about Realize the Market, we started doing team meetings and one-on-ones at the start of this year. And this year, from the start of this year to current date, we've 3x'd the company. So that was the one thing that we've changed the
That's
entire
true.
business.
That's absolutely
Yeah,
true.
that's a
the
fact.
one thing.
Our
And
jobs-
we 3x'd our business in less than half a year.
Yeah, everything got much more efficient, and I think everybody got a really good understanding of their role and what the power that they have within their roles, and it really just allowed everything to take off really smoothly.
Absolutely, because communication and delegation sets those boundaries on how far an employee feels comfortable to go.
For sure.
And then those one-on-ones really give the confidence to those individuals to take it even further.
Well, and it also teaches you kind of more about who we are and what we're better at, you know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that was really all the questions I had.
Yeah, I think 2 of those were covered by one for
Really?
you and
Yeah.
one from you.
I had to change a couple of mine.
Yeah. I think we could go into how do you create motivation for yourself and the team?
That's a wonderful question. So I actually struggled with this for a little bit, and I had to dig deep into this. And at first, a lot of people's whys is I want a nice house, I want a family, I want the picket fence, I want a car, or some other people is I want to buy a house for my mom, I want to help my my siblings around me, and for the most part, those are great aspirations and goals to have. But in my personal experience, it wasn't enough. I had to think bigger than that, because obviously, if we're doing business and we're growing, my family is going to get taken care of. So that's a no-brainer. But what is going to push it further? Because if I just worked all of my hours, then my family would be okay. But if we wanted to do bigger and we wanted to create opportunity for other people, then my family isn't a big enough why for me to teach everybody else to do it, because my family's taken care of, they're good, so why should I keep going? Why should I keep teaching? Why should I keep, doing all these things? And so that's what led me into this, is why am I doing this outside of my family? Like, what other good things do I want to accomplish? And something that I've never spoken about publicly is my biggest why is bringing vegetation and renewable energy to third world countries. And the way that I wanted to do that is by impacting other people's lives and how they can impact other people, create a domino effect through a mindset and rehabilitation through delegation and communication. And so it was a nice little domino effect there, is saying, okay, I want to help third world countries, and I also want to help people learn and grow within themselves so they can provide for their families too, just as much as I have. So that was my biggest reason, is domino affecting that why. So my family first, my team second, and then the world next. And they all congregate together. So every time I wake up in the morning, I just think about those things. I'm waking up every morning because I'm doing this for my family. I'm waking up every morning and going as hard as I possibly can for my team. And whenever things get hard and 9 p.m. rolls around, 10 p.m. rolls around, 11 p.m. rolls around, and I'm still working, that's whenever I dig into that mindset that these hours that I'm spending now are going to be the hours that are going to help me change the world.
Yeah, I love that. I think, like, with that point, for me too, like, I've had these, like, financial goals that, like, when you hit them, like you said, you hit them. It's like, now what? So having that point, like, the reason you're doing this being on a much larger scale for yourself, like, for me personally, it's also impacting lives on a deep level. And when I'm at those 9 p.m. moments, like, like feeling discouraged or not very motivated, the things that come into my head that push me are memories of, like, friends or family or just anybody coming back and letting me know, like, hey, what you told me here helped me do this and this. Like, to me, those are the most fulfilling things ever, to get those types of messages. And that's what I think about whenever I feel, just super not motivated.
Your
it's like
impact.
Exactly, and that's
makes a big difference.
It's huge.
See, when I first got into the entrepreneurial area, my motivation is recycling and taking care of the environment. But right now, that's not lucrative, and as far as like something that I can build a foundation on. And so I always have to remind myself, like, even though I'm not there yet, like these are the stepping stones that I have to take, so then I can apply all of my business and communication with other people all over the country. I mean, we've met how many people that have been involved in like, you know, renewable energy and recycling and things like that. And so it's tough because you're like, oh, I'm not there yet, you know, and just like be patient, you know, because there's totally a bigger picture. It's not just
I think
making money.
I think what you were saying was like that really boils down to the faith. How much faith do you have in what you're doing, and let that faith drive you, because if you fully believe in your heart like what you're doing is right for you and your loved ones, then that faith can produce those thoughts in your head that push you to work through the unmotivated times. Like it's just you have to have that faith.
Yeah, and another thing too that really gets you there is once you have people around you that trust you, like for instance this room, right? You have to offer vulnerability. You have to be raw, right?
Yeah.
I have to talk to you guys about problems that I have. I have to talk to you guys about things that aren't going right in the business, and I can't always act like everything is rainbows and butterflies, because it's not always that way. And there were times where we've all had to have, you know, hard conversations, you know, whether it be pay cut or whether it be, you know, losing a client or whatever it may be.
Not being able to come together.
Not being able to
Discipline, habits.
Right, those things are important for a business to grow, because not everything is perfect all the time. And if you're with a new business, especially a startup business, those sacrifices are really important. So, you know, we have to learn how to be raw, and we also have to learn how to make sacrifices within ourselves.
So that goes into my next question. What is your current role like? How important is this to you?
Well, so I personally think that this is everything. Like, this is literally everything to me. Like, it doesn't get any greater than what we're doing. And my role, the one thing that I do is, how can I help others? Like, how can I give as much information that I possibly can to make sure that the task that somebody has in front of them, they have all of the tools, knowledge, and resources to accomplish that task. And if they don't, I open up my line of communication, my phone line, my email, my text message, everything, so those people can reach out to me and talk to me directly if they can't get through those processes that we've talked about.
It's one of the reasons why we're doing these podcasts, because
Yep.
Alex and I were sitting, having meeting after meeting, you know, and even just brainstorming sessions. And I'm like, we have to record this. Like, I'm sitting there with my phone recording it, and I'm like, no, but the world, like, this is what you're doing. Like, you're motivating not just business owners that we work with right now, or even the community that we work with right now. You know, this is for everybody.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
I think it
100%
helps
agree.
us too.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a
for
team.
sure.
Absolutely.
It does. It does.
Absolutely.
This is amazing. And whenever you get together, you know, like this, we'll leave it on this thought. But whenever you get together like this and you have the think tank, you have the brainstorming, you know, greatness actually comes out of this. This is where greatness is made. Greatness is not made in a room by yourself. Greatness is made whenever you bring amazing minds together and you guys communicate about amazing topics.
This is just the beginning.
It's just the beginning. All right. So I think that, do you have anything else?
Yeah, well, on that note, then what's next? You know, what do you see the next 5 years looking like?
The next 5 years, I think where we stand is helping big Fortune 500 companies. And we help, one of my biggest goals is to 10x a Fortune 500 company in 1 year.
Ooh.
That's a big goal of
Yeah.
mine in the next 5 years. And I really think that that's possible. And people think that that's a
We're on the
big,
track, baby.
people think that's a big bite to take. But I think in the next 5 years, we'll be willing to do it.
So if that's you and you're willing to take that risk on us, give us a call.
Give us a call.
Hey.
All right. Thank you guys. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next time.